All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to another one of our webinars, Scaling for Success, Strategic Planning and Goal Setting. First things first, we've got everyone in their preferred language channel. So, if you want, please enter your name, business name, and location in the chat. We'd love to say hello. So for this webinar, Scaling for Success, Strategic Planning and Goal Setting, it's hosted in partnership with the PepsiCo Foundation's Impacto Hispanic Restaurant Accelerator. My name is Brittany Richardson. I'm the Business Engagement Specialist for Axion Opportunity Fund, or AOF. AOF is a national nonprofit organization that provides affordable loan capital, as well as wraparound business resources to small business owners across the country, with a specific focus on women and entrepreneurs of color. AOF is one of the nonprofit implementing partners for the Impacto program, alongside Allies for Community Business, Lift Fund, and Prospera. A huge thank you to those wonderful partners, and of course to the PepsiCo Foundation for those incredible for their incredible support. Before I introduce you to our speakers and get started with our conversation, I want to go over a couple of really quick housekeeping items. You should be able to see a chat box in the black bar in the bottom of your screen, and you can use that throughout our presentation. We're going to have a question and answer session following our discussion. And we want to use the questions that you are able to drop in the chat. So please feel free to use that throughout today's discussion. We're also going to be recording today's webinar, so you can refer back to the information presented at a later time. Please keep an eye out in your email for that recap. And lastly, when the webinar concludes, you're going to receive a really short survey about today's presentation. We really value your feedback. So if you have a few minutes, please feel free to give us your thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Wonderful. Okay, so let's start our conversation about the importance of strategic planning and goal setting. We've got some amazing experts, and I'm really excited to start with our introductions. So first, I'm excited to introduce Jesse Iniguez, co-founder of Back of the Yards Coffee Co., and he is a dedicated entrepreneur deeply rooted in Chicago's South Side. Born to Mexican immigrants and a lifelong resident of Back of the Yards, Jesse has recognized the potential of a coffee business to make significant social impact. Since its inception in 2016, his Latinx-owned coffee company has not only revitalized the community through job creation and economic stimulation, but has also gained national attention, including being featured as Hispanic heroes in a national campaign. Additionally, Jesse was honored with the BMW Ultimate Drive Award in 2018. Beyond his ventures in coffee, he founded No Manches Clothing Co. and has been a pivotal community leader, even running for alderman in Chicago's 12th Ward in 2011. Hello, Jesse. Wonderful. Next, we have Lizeth Morales, Peruvian restaurant chain owner with 11 years of experience. She's a former DACA recipient turned successful entrepreneur, and she is fully adept at scaling and operating multiple high-volume locations. Hi, Lizeth.
Hello, everyone.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, we have Pam Rosario. Pam is a Dominican attorney raised in NYC with over a decade of legal experience. She currently specializes in intellectual property and business law, helping small businesses and entrepreneurs get the legal assistance they need to run a successful and legally protected endeavors. With knowledge is your ultimate superpower as her mantra, she believes it's your duty to protect yourself and your business by arming yourself with all the information you'll need to intimately understand each aspect of your business. Hi, Pam.
Hi, everyone.
Wonderful. All right, I'm going to drop where you can find all of our wonderful speakers in the chat. and then we're going to get started with today's conversation. I would love to start with you, Pam. So what are the key components to a business foundation and why are they important?
So I like to think about your business foundations as being comprised of three pillars. I call them the three pillars of legal foundations or business foundations. And they are really quickly your financial protections, contractual protections, and intellectual. So your intellectual property. So I'll go over them each in a bit really quickly, but these are the pillars that I think that your business literally stands on to make sure that it's on a solid legal footing. And they're helpful to think about whether you're a new business owner or a business that's been in place for 5 or 10 years. It's important to revisit them from time to time and make sure everything looks good, kind of like an audit. So I'll go over them quickly, and then if anyone has any questions specifically, we can talk about that in the Q&A. So the financial pillar. This is all about the financial operations of your company, meaning are you your business entity, for example? Are you a limited liability company? Are you a corporation? Are you in good standing with your state? Are your books and records organized? Do you have a trusted accountant? Business bank account. So anything that has to do with money, the financial aspect, is all of that said? Do you feel good about it? And again, this can be something that you look into year after year just to make sure that everything, looks good. Second pillar, contractual, meaning what are the contracts that you have in place for your business? And this can be internal contracts with your employees, your independent contractors, and external contracts with your vendors or your manufacturers. Any business relationship that you enter into, again, internal or external, you want to make sure that there is a written agreement that lays out all of the details, right? Because you essentially want to make sure that everyone is on the same page about what's happening. What are the payments? What happens if someone wants to terminate? What are your responsibilities? What are my responsibilities as a business? That way, later on, if anything does go wrong, everyone knows, what the remedies are. It's in the contract. This is what happens when a shipment is late. This is what happens when payment isn't received on time, and there are no surprises later. And then the last pillar is intellectual, meaning intellectual property. This can get really complex. So I'll just say, IP, as I'll call it, intellectual property, is about inventions of the mind. So where that comes up in your business is really trademarks and copyrights. It's about how the public perceives the brand, like what you think of. If I say McDonald's, immediately you're thinking about the golden arches, right? That's their brand identity. Those are trademarks. And then copyrights are more about your content. So if you write articles for your business, that's something that can be copyrighted. If you have images that you take for your website or your Instagram, those things can get copyright protection. So when you think about those three pillars, that's kind of the foundation that sets up your business from a legal perspective. And you just want to touch base to make sure that those things, are looking good from time to time, that you feel comfortable with what's in there. Do you need to add a contract? Do you need to apply for another trademark? Do you want to, add a different business entity or change from an LLC to an S Corp? So that's really what I think sets like a really good legal business foundation.
Thank you so much, Pam, for mentioning that. And also the intellectual property as inventions of the mind, because truly when you're creating a business, you've designed everything. So it's really important to protect those things. I love
Yes.
that. So also another question for you. How can business owners strategically use those business foundations once they've created them?
I love this question because I know probably everything that I just mentioned sounds really overwhelming, but I think the key to these business foundations is being strategic by figuring out what your specific game plan is for how to tackle things. Each business is different. Each business is unique. So each business is going to take these pillars and do them in different orders, at different times, in different ways. So, they're all important, of course, but I would say rely on your advisors, your accountants, lawyers to help you come up with a realistic timeline on when you need to get certain things done. For example, when I work with my clients, if you're a product-based business, I give you a different timeline than if you are a service provider. For example, I mentioned switching accountants. Maybe you want to switch an accountant, or maybe you have an idea for a food product for your business that you want to launch, or you want to ask a manufacturer to sign an agreement. My advice would be to set small goals along the way, on your way to the bigger goal, and then check-ins with those advisors. So and with yourself, really your team, like, am I on the path to making this goal really happen? Okay, let's do some research for this food product that we want to launch, or let's ask peers for recommendations for an accountant. Those are small steps forward towards the bigger goal. So the key, I think, is to have those goals and timelines, but make sure that they work for your particular business, for yourself, for your team, and that you're touching base. And then I'd say most importantly, allow yourself to change these timelines. It's okay if you get to a goal deadline and you're not quite there yet, right? Things happen, especially in business. So I would say, don't put so much pressure on yourself, and, just be kind to yourself with the timeline. If you don't get to where you need to be at a certain time, it's okay, reassess, and then set a new goal or a new deadline.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that and sharing the flexibility within that. Like, it gives you structure so you can influence your business, but there is flexibility there.
Yeah.
Love that. All right. So moving on to our next question. There is no right way to own and grow a business. So Jesse, I'd love to start with you. What are some ways you have scaled your food business?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. There really isn't a right way or wrong way, right? There's so many different ways, and we're an example of that. When we first started the business, we literally had no money. But one of the things that really helped us was that we seek support. We asking questions, asking the community for support financially as well. One of the, I think, critical things that helped us just get started was because we had no money, we had to do a crowdfunding campaign. But what that did for us was that not only did we raise more than what we had asked for, and really kind of reaffirmed that we had a good idea of what we wanted to do. But most importantly, what it did for us, it created fans and customers and people that were willing to, give as little as $20 or $5 in some cases, but they wanted to support in some in one way, so that when we opened our door, we had a line out the door of people who either gave to our initial campaign, or who were they shared our campaign, and somebody else saw it and they came as well, and our first week was super successful. But we did, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears just to get started. My advice is, as Pamela was saying, is work on that business plan. And I think there's definitely resources out in the internet where you can find it that'll ask you the right questions to figure out. But the basic premise of it is, it's what's your idea? What is it that you want to do, and how are you going to get there? And most importantly, for a business, I think we can't forget is that at the end of the day, you have to make money, otherwise your business won't exist, right? And so for us, our business plan is a working document. We've built on it since we first started. And so let me turn off my camera, because I'm actually in the mountains of Veracruz right now, so the internet's a little shoddy. But but I wanted to make sure I was here, and one of the things, as we're talking about the business plan, is seeing the forest from the trees, and that's really what makes an entrepreneur. So it's funny that I'm actually looking at the forest as I'm talking to you. So, but just to end that little piece, the importance is to really, your business plan is a working document. Follow it, edit it, change it, whenever it's possible, whenever you need to, and really adjust it for what you want to do. Currently, we're on a growth plan, and we've been lucky to really be part of this opportunity. Again, it's we found an opportunity for to present the plan to the city of Chicago, and we were selected. And with that came some funds that then help us get more funds to be able to finalize this project. And so we're growing now. It's definitely not your typical, growth kind of plan, but it definitely it's about looking what opportunities out there, ensuring that they go with what your plan is, what your goal is, that you don't deviate from that, and use whatever resources are out there. Definitely take advantage. There's a lot of more grants now since the pandemic. There's more banks that want to work with people of color and women as well. So take full advantage of that. And if they're saying they're going to do that, make sure that you're knocking on their door and making sure that they are actually doing what they said they're going to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jesse, especially just your whole kind of growth experience, starting with that crowdfunding and then having fans right out the gate, and then continuing to kind of modify your business plan, like you said, so that you can grow and scale. So I think it's really inspirational. And thanks for being here with us, even on your travels. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Lizeth, I'd love to go to you for the same question. So there's no right way to own and grow a business, but what are some ways you've scaled your own food business?
I will say, I mean, definitely there is a lot of trial and error. So I would first start with having the mindset of just having patience with yourself and understand that it takes time. But there are some key things that I started focusing a lot when I started seeing real results when it came to us scaling and growing. And Pamela touched on this, and it really is so key for me is understanding your numbers and having a really great financial team. So it's being honest with yourself. If you're not naturally a numbers person, I wasn't, and I'm still not, and that's okay, right? Because I think a lot of times when we start a business, we want to wear all the hats, or we want to do everything, and we're starting a business. We also don't have the money, right, to start hiring all these people. But if there are two areas that I say it's so important to invest in, is a really good financial team, looking for someone that, for me, when I first started, that has experience with small businesses, that has worked with restaurants before. And till this day, whenever I hire anyone, I always want them to have experience in my area, because a lot of times I'm not the expert, right? So I need someone that's going to help me out, that's going to give me information that I don't even know the questions to. So that's really first key, is just having a really good financial support. And sometimes it can start even as basic as just your bank, as Jesse was saying. Building a long-term relationship with your bank institution, for me, has helped me a lot, because as your business grows, they know your business, and they're going to be more open and flexible to giving you different financial, even loans, because you already have a solid relationship with them. The second thing for me is branding and marketing. And when I say branding, is really taking the time to sort of say, what makes my story unique? And a lot of times when we think of brands, we think of, the big brands, but in all is sort of saying to yourself, you have a unique story to share. As small business owners, as entrepreneurs, we all have such a powerful story to share, and being comfortable, letting your consumers, letting your community know what's your story. I found that for me, that started giving me a lot of great results, and it really allowed me to connect to my customers and my community. And then the third thing would be marketing, finding a good marketing team that's going to help you scale. Exactly what is the plan? For me, when I started focusing on volume, right, I wanted to have my restaurants reach a certain sales goal. Okay, what did I need to do to make that happen? Either and start investing in Facebook ads, start partnering up with different delivery partners, whatever it may be, but having as well like a marketing team that can help you with that. And then for me, the last thing that's allowed me to scale is me as a restaurateur, remove myself from being the operator, right? And again, that's where giving yourself grace comes in, because when you start a business, you are most likely going to be the operator. You are most likely want to do everything. But remember, the big picture is you are the CEO. So your main job is always to focus on growth. So to do that little by little, we remove all these hats so that we can focus on the big picture. So for me, how I did that is understanding the importance of streamlining my process within my kitchen, within my front end. And again, because I knew that by doing this, that would equal freedom for me. And it meant that my businesses can run successfully without me having to be there all day, without my kitchen, my executive chef having to be there all day. And even now when I meet with him, that's always our conversation. Like, what do we do so that this can be replicated as if you and I were not here? And that conversation is just so key. So I would say those are the things: branding, marketing, your finances, and most importantly, as especially in the food industry, streamlining your process and your operations.
Yes, I love that. There were so many good pieces in this whole conversation. And your willingness to share, like, it can be difficult to work on your business and not in it, is so key, because it's so hard. It's so hard because you know it, like, you know it inside and out. And so thank you so much for sharing that. There's some love coming in the chat, so I know this is resonating with people. I just want to call out, as our speakers share their experience, if you have a question, please drop it in the chat, because we're going to have an opportunity to chat with them directly in our live Q&A. Okay, so moving forward, Jesse, I would love to hear from you. Can you tell me about a time when you had to make a tough business decision? How did you know what was going to be best for your business, and how did you navigate it to get where you are now?
Again, apologies for if taking off the screen so I don't freeze. But I went real quick. I just wanted to emphasize what Lizette said was, the difference between self-employed and being a business owner, right? If you want to be a business owner, grow and expand, employ other people, then you can't be stuck doing everything, because you just can't. It's impossible. You gotta be able to build, grow, and trust people, and give them the tools to be able to share your vision and build on that vision. Otherwise, it's a great vision with no action. Nothing will happen. But to your question, I think for us, the pandemic was super tough. The we had just started our growth plan, and we had sat with a bank. We had already agreed to terms, and we had a closing the Monday. So everything shut down on Friday. Our closing was on that Monday. So we just kind of like, well, let's wait and see what happens. Nobody knew what was going on. Called the bank. Obviously, it was closed on Monday. I drove over there to see if maybe somebody's there. Doors were locked. And it wasn't until 2 weeks later where the bank basically called us, and they're like, "Yeah, actually, it's not gonna happen." It turns out it was probably a blessing in disguise, because we probably would have just spent that money trying to survive, and then be in debt. And so we had to figure out what to do. One of the biggest things for me that, again, nobody knew what was going to happen, how folks were going to respond. And we made a decision on very, very on that we were going to keep everybody employed until we could, even to the point where we wouldn't pay ourselves. And at the same time, we shifted from having to go through this growth plan to shifting to how do we find money? How do we find grants? I became a grant writer. I had never written grants before. And so, that was one of those things that we really had to shift. Luckily, because we were already embarking on a growth plan, we had our financials together. And I think that's something that I would like to make sure really resonates with everyone is, know what your financials look like. Lisette, mentioned that as well. Like, so key. I'm not, finance is not my cup of tea. Making, I mean, no pun intended, making coffee is, right? And figuring out how to, grow the business, you need to make sure you have the right people around you. And so luckily, we had our financials together. And so when the PPP came about, we had everything from day one, and we sent it. Unfortunately, even with that, the big bank that we were working with at the time didn't really take in our application until like, weeks later, after the first kind of round had finished. But we started to apply for grants. We started we were looking anywhere and everywhere. We also have an amazing supporters, people that like what we do. And we were getting emails and messages on Facebook and Instagram sending us opportunities for different grants. We, just looking at our network, we asked. And so what really kept us alive during this pandemic was these grants. In fact, this project that we've embarked on was open during 2020, there towards the end of 2020, and it's just materializing now. So it took 3 years to really happen, but we excuse me, we applied and we stuck through it, and it's been super hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's been very stressful. Again, making sure that our employees were getting paid was the key thing, because without them, we just would not exist. And through their support and their help and these grants, we're now able to grow and expand, and looking to open up a second and third location, our roasting facility, and now I'm back at on location. I hadn't traveled to coffee farms since February of 2020, and now I'm back here again. Meeting with the farmers and trying to create those relationships again to bring some good coffee back home.
Wonderful. I love that you just shared something so key, and I think everyone has kind of touched on, is knowing where your finances are and keeping good record. It helped you, so when those opportunities were available, like you said, you were ready. You had what you needed. You were like, I'm submitting my application, and regardless of whether financials were your cup of tea, you were able to have the right people around you to be prepared for that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So Pam, I would love to come back to you, and without breaching confidentiality, can you tell us about a time that you helped a client navigate a difficult business challenge, and like, how did you work together to help that business grow from it?
Yeah, for sure. I had a client who actually started a food business, over 6 years ago. She had started from her home, and then scaled to a food truck, and then had a location, and then two, and it was wonderful. But it wasn't really until 6 years into her business that they decided, her sister was her business partner, to reach out to an attorney and, kind of plug in the legal holes that had been missing. And so kind of the first thing that I did, I had a lot of cleaning up to do, as you can imagine. But the first thing we did, like I mentioned, we set goals and we set timelines, but I also needed to manage expectations. I believe that it's never too late to start these things, to start getting protected, to start getting your finances in order. However, there are some things, or there were some things for that business that were a little bit beyond repair. For example, she wanted to trademark her name. She was coming out with a sauce that she wanted to sell nationwide. And so when we went to search for the name in the trademark database, it was taken. And so, sometimes there are strategies that you can employ to try to get around that in the trademark world. But unfortunately, there are just some times where If someone has the same name or a similar name and it's in your same industry, that's something that's very difficult to overcome. And so while that was tough for her, and her business partner, we just had to be creative, and she had to rebrand in the end. Unfortunately, she had to change her name. We made it a marketing event, right? We were her followers, we included them, these are the names we're choosing, vote on them, had a launch for the new name. Like it was a whole event. So it ended up working out. We ended up finding a name that, we cleared, we did a search. It was all good to move forward. But it was very difficult for her because she had to pivot. And it's kind of what Jesse was saying, during COVID, I'm sure you all had to pivot if you were in business then. And throughout your business journey, you are going to have to make some pivots that you were not expecting. It was difficult for them to move away from that name. They'd invested time and money into it, but they knew that if they wanted to grow strategically and be protected, most importantly, they had to move forward with a name that could get some type of trademark protection. So, again, was it tough? For sure. Was it a lesson learned for them? Absolutely. And so, we moved forward with the process and it ended up working out in the end, but it was a little bit of or a lot of it, I'll be honest. It was a tough pill to swallow for them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that story. It reminds me of what Lizette said is like, you don't even know the questions you don't know
Right.
until someone says, oh, hey. But I think this really speaks to one, I'm sure many of our food owners who are in the audience can get a lot of good information from this, but personally, I see so much creativity and resiliency in business
Yeah.
owners. And so I love that you shared that story and it was like, okay, we're going to pivot and make it a marketing event. Like, that's so
Yeah.
fun.
And I
So,
just want to say, like, one of the main things that I wanted to share with them was no shame in this, right? Like, when you start out, I think we've all said it, you don't know what you don't know. There's no blueprint to this. No one hands you a paper that says, this is how you start a business, and these are the things that you need to do. And so you kind of just figure it out on the way because you don't have the funds or the knowledge or the experience. So I didn't want them to feel shamed, but now they're empowered because they have the knowledge, right? Like they know what to do moving forward, and it sucked, to be frank. I don't know how Jorge is going to translate that. um, but now they know. And so as their business grows and flourishes for, 10 or 20 years, that's that lesson that was learned, and, they know how to move forward.
oh, so key. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, Lizette, I would love to go to you next. When business owners think about setting business goals, what do they need to consider to make those things attainable?
Sure. Um, I really quickly I want to touch, and I think Pamela said something so powerful, and that's the word shame, because I find that a lot of times, especially as small business owners, I know for me when I first started, and I think it comes because our businesses are such our pride and joy. It's almost like a kid, right? And we never want to admit that we're being a bad business owner, quote unquote, or that we don't know something. And I feel a lot of times, I know for me in the past when I first started, it held me back from asking questions or wanting to reach out to another small business owner because I didn't want them to think, how do I not know this, or I should know this. So I think that's so powerful because it's so true. And I would say like it's something that I still, even though I have scaled in my businesses, I still work through. And it's okay because it's even me doing this 11 years, I still don't know everything. And I like that. I don't want to know everything because once you think you know everything, then that's when you stop growing. So sorry, I just wanted to touch base on that because I think that that's just such an important mindset to have, is just to let go of that shame. Going back to your question, Brittany. So I would say for me, it's having a clear understanding of what is your goal and understanding that in your businesses, you're going to have different phases of different goals. So when I first started, my goal for me was, how do I connect with my community? How do I connect with my customers? And then what I do that helps me is I work backwards from that. So I figure out what are the steps. Okay, if I want to, get my community and my customers to know me, thankfully we live in an era where, it's a lot of this stuff we can do on our own without having to pay. You have Instagram. So it's sort of saying, okay, I have to create a consistent plan to post, to give my customers information on who I am, what I do, what makes my restaurant different than others, what makes it unique, how do I get them to know me? So a lot of times for me, it's just breaking down the goal. Then I had my biggest goal that I ever, my first big one that I had achieved was turning one of my locations into $1 million location. So one, you also have to be realistic that the big ones aren't going to happen overnight. They're going to take time, right? But having that North Star, having that big goal is also essential, right? Because now you have this big goal and you break it down. Okay, I'm currently selling this much. For me to get to $1 million, what's that difference? How much do I want to bring it up every year? What time frame is it going to take me? How much a week do I have to add in sales? Who can I partner up with? How do I extend my menu? Now I have to bring in catering. Now I have to bring in all these things. But that's why breaking the steps on the goal is important, because then it allows you to think of all these other things that'll help you do that. And then this way, when you finally reach it, right, then you do that same process, is taking it step by step, simplifying it for yourself, and most importantly, understanding that it takes time. And it's all about, once you build that recipe, you apply it to the next one, and that's pretty much how you keep going forward.
Yes, I love that. So much great info and before, and just referring back to that, big idea of shame and how like we want to leave that in the past, because it opens us up to asking the questions and just creating space for those conversations. So I love that. And then also on to the new question, and breaking down everything into the smaller pieces is really key and makes it feel so attainable. So thank you for sharing that.
And sorry, one last thing, because I know this was part of the question. It's going back to just using your resources, and a lot of times for me, growth and scaling, like, I find your team is always also your best resources. They're there every day, interacting with customers every day. When I even have a new hire till this day, even if I bring in a new dishwasher, I'm always asking them, where did you work? What do they do in that kitchen? Like, is there anything that they do that we can do, even from washing dishes, right? Like, do they have a process? Like, how do they control this? So it's just so key. It's always on knowing what resources you can use. And sometimes your resources are right in front of you. And the most powerful thing with these goals, going back, I know Jesse said this and it's so important, is sharing your vision. Once you have this goal, trust to share this vision with your team. Whenever I bring on someone new, I always tell them, this is my vision for El Gordo Peruvian Eatery, and this is how you can help me, right? You're in the food industry. So a lot of times I understand that what makes it challenging is that, our staff isn't always with us for years. We're sort of also like the transition in between the different phases of life. But I always share with people, even if you're with me 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, you can help me have an impact. And this is what I can help you in return. I can help you develop some skills here that are going to help you everywhere. Because if there's one thing I'm a believer on, is that you learn so much working in the food industry. You learn some skills that are going to help you no matter what field you go in. And that's why sharing your vision is so key.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you kind of everyone's so ingrained in your business, especially when you open that door and say like, what ideas do you have, at every level, and then invite them to be part of your greater vision. So cool. All right. So for this last official question, then we'll move into our Q&A. So if you're out there, you have questions, please drop them in the chat so we can try and fit them in. But Jesse, I would love to start with you for this question. Entrepreneurship can feel really lonely at times. How do you stay motivated and accountable as you work towards your business goals?
I think Les said it best. I mean, follow your North Star. Always remember what that is. For us, just remembering, why is it that you started this in the first place? what is it that you wanted to do, and making sure that you always keep that in mind. For us, it's our business operates in what we call a triple bottom line. People, uh, people, planet, and profit, right? And so for us, those three things are always top of mind. And so everything that we do involves that. We started what we call was our seed model. So many don't know, the coffees are actually not beans or seeds that are found in these coffee cherries that grow in high altitudes. And so our seed is what stands for social impact, economic development, environmental responsibility, and direct relationships. Everything that we do involves one or all four of those pillars. And so, when we're doing these things, like, one of the things that I'm pushing for and advocating in Chicago is raising the sub minimum wage. For, tipped employees make less than the minimum wage, and often are kind of held to tips in order to make ends meet. And what we're saying is that it doesn't have to be that way. And we're proving that we can. In December, we're raising our own minimum wage to $20 an hour. And we're doing that to demonstrate that you can make a profit and you can still be a responsible business owner. And again, the way to do that is to really look at your financials. We can still be profitable. We don't have to be billionaires, right? I don't think in order to get there, you gotta like screw people on the way up there, right? And I think we can still live comfortably. We can still be successful and still take care of our employees. In fact, I think the reason why we've become so popular, and I think the reason why people support us is specifically because of that. Because we know what our mission is, we share our mission, and we're trying to influence other businesses to do the same as we do. And I think, for me, information is meant to be shared, right? When you have knowledge, and when you're doing something, and you know how to do it well, it's important to share that. I think one of the biggest, flaws a lot of business owners have these days is that they keep the information to themselves and within, because they think other people are going to steal them, right? But if you don't, I mean, other people are still going to do these things, right? Or some of them. But if you've already made mistakes and you've learned from them, it's good to share that with them. Obviously, there's always, unscrupulous, business owners, but there's going to be other people that think like you, that work like you, and then you can create these groups, right? To the point of the question, it sometimes it does feel lonely, because when you're an entrepreneur and you have this vision and you see the forest from the trees, you see the big picture, it's hard to really express that and really share that with folks who may not necessarily have the same vision or understand it. But you still have to put it out there. You still have to share it, and even if they don't understand it, somebody will, and somebody will come who may have the resources that you need and will support that vision. We're currently on that. One of the reasons why I'm here in Mexico is because there's a group of investors that like what we're doing in Chicago, and they see a need or an opportunity to also build coffee shops where others aren't in Mexico. Like basically exact same thing I'm doing here. And so I don't know if anything will materialize out of that. But even if my vision, if I'm not able to do my vision here in Mexico, somebody else doing what we're doing in Mexico is a good thing, right? And so for us, being able to share that, I think is key. We do have an opportunity to kind of start and figure that out, but don't isolate yourself. It already is lonely, but don't self-isolate. Look for the people that have the same ideas as you, that have the same vision as you, and again, share that, because they may also have some resources or ideas that can help your vision. And I think for me, our success has been is really sharing that vision, communicating with people, and finding people that think alike and that want to support a vision like yours.
Oh, I love that you mentioned that. And I just want to kind of cover a couple of the things because I know there were some questions in the chat, but you mentioned your seed model. And I just wanted to highlight that that is social impact, economic development, environment responsibility, and direct relationships. Did I get that right? Wonderful. I love how it's tied into your business as well. I didn't know that coffee came from a seed. I'm learning a lot today, everybody. I'm learning a lot. So you have the seed model, totally, taking care of your employees and focusing on bringing them in, increasing that minimum wage, even above what, the state is saying you should, so they feel taken care of. The opportunity to build the same kind of model in Mexico. Congratulations. That is very, very cool to come there. And then also, yes, it's so cool. And then I love what you said about not isolating yourself and not feeling like you can't share, that you are really, by opening yourself up, you're creating a community. So love that. Thank you so much for sharing
And
that. Yes.
I just want to add just one last thing, is why the importance of paying employees a livable wage, and why I push for other people to do it. I know we're sacrificing and to kind of show that this model works. And I know that not, especially in the restaurant industry, your profit margins are very, very minimum. So I don't want to like knock on the people who aren't, but know that when, employees, when the minimum wage is a lot low, is higher, when people have money to spend, guess where they're going to spend them? In our businesses, right? It's people who are, low income to or middle income, who are the ones that are really, that move the economy. So when we put more money in their pockets, they spend in our businesses. So that's why, again, it's also why it's important to support small businesses, but know that, putting the money in the pockets of people who actually spend it is good for the economy, and it's good for small businesses like ours.
Yes, love that. Thank you so much, Jesse. And then Pamela, I would love to ask you the same question. Entrepreneurship can feel very lonely, but how do you stay motivated and accountable as you work towards your business goals?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Jesse said, but from a little bit of a different perspective. Sharing obviously is very important. I also, like to seek the information. Like, I may not be in your industry, but I am also an entrepreneur. I'm a solo law firm owner. I wasn't always that, right? I didn't have the blueprint. I knew how to be a lawyer, but I didn't know how to start a law firm. So the first thing I did, just seek out other solo law firm owners. I went on LinkedIn. I looked for women of color that had started their own law firms and asked for meetings just to talk to them, right? Some of them said no, and that was okay, right? I'm about collaboration over competition, but not everyone is like that. And I just wanted to ask questions. How did you get to how you were? What are the resources that you use? What is your, what software do you use for this? And you'll find, I think, in my opinion, some people are very willing to hand that information over. They want to see you succeed. And so I really rely on those resources. It can be difficult putting yourself out there. And again, they can say no, but that's the worst that can happen. The best that can happen is you can get another peer in your industry. You can learn about something, or you can share something with someone who, may not have otherwise known about it. So for me, I'm constantly, having these like virtual coffee chats or meeting people in real life now that, it's a little bit, it's better to do so, just so that I can have that network of people that I can talk to for advice, or just to vent, about things that are happening, unexpected pivots like we talked about. I just think it's really important to find people that are doing the same thing that you are doing, because just like it's difficult to talk to your friends that are not entrepreneurs because they just don't get it. It's the same, speaking to other business owners that are not in your industry just quite, right? Like everyone, it's helpful to talk to everyone, but if you speak to someone who's doing the exact same thing that you're doing, I think it's really affirming. It can be really motivating. And it's just great. It really helps in those lonely times that come on this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much good stuff. Sharing and seeking
Mhm.
information was so great. You said collaboration over competition, and people in the chat were like, yes, feeling that. So that is these are all very powerful things. And I also love how you mentioned that networking is key, but also actively finding your network,
Right.
looking for people who, like you said, you were looking for women of color who had started their own law firm because you're like, that's where I'm going. And if the worst someone can say is no, but the best thing that can happen is just sky's the limit, it's like, of
Right.
course we should reach out. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And last but certainly not least, Lizeth, I would love to ask you the same question about entrepreneurship, feeling lonely. So how do you stay motivated and accountable as you work towards your goals?
I have found that self accountability is so key in the entrepreneurial journey. I always joke with friends. I say, the best thing about being an entrepreneur is you have the freedom, right, to make your own decisions, to set your own timelines, to set your own goals. But with that, you also don't have a boss that's on top of you saying, hey, did you meet this deadline? Did you reach that goal? So self understanding that self accountability is key. It's important. And usually I think that that's why simplifying your goals is essential, right? Because the more simple it is for you, the easier it is for you to stay accountable. For me, that's keeping myself organized is what really helps me. And sometimes, especially in my case, I have the multiple locations. I just launched our sauces brand. So it's sort of saying, okay, for each and in each location and each different business, I'm working on different things. And that's why, again, simplifying your goal and making it very clear to yourself, it's so important because otherwise, a lot of times when I first started, is you're busy all day and you're doing 100 different things, but you don't really feel like you were productive. So it's asking yourself, okay, for this particular, I say to myself, for this location, what am I working on right now? What's important for this location? What am I working on? What's important? And I think when if you first just started in your entrepreneurial journey, the first thing that I would recommend is just establishing your brand, right? Asking yourself, what do I want my brand to be known for? What do I want customers to know about me? And even if you take just whether it's months or even a year, whatever it may take, but you stay on track with just that one thing. My goal this year is going to be to really start understanding what do I want my brand to represent from things such as colors, as fonts, as language. When people talk about El Gordo Peruvian Eatery, what words do I want them to use? And people are going to know that how you talk about the brand. So it's simplifying it in that way, understanding that it takes spaces depending on what phase your business is in. But most importantly, is just having patience and grace with yourself. It takes time, and that's okay. In the end, knowing your why, like Jesse says, is always so key because for me, that's what helps keep me motivated. We're a family business. So for me, building on my mother's legacy, that's always my why. And when things get tough, as they always do, your why is what kind of just keeps you going.
I love that. Yes. And someone mentioned that they love the sauce. So I wanted to mention that because, people are enjoying it. But you also mentioned self accountability and having the freedom. And then also the freedom, like you don't have a boss. So that's a lot of freedom that you have to manage. Simplifying those goals and making them easy. And then I love how you talked about taking time to really establish your brand, give yourself the grace to move through the changes and just hone in on it. And of course, having a why, like you said, things will get tough. That's one thing we know for sure. And having that to go back to. I love all of that. So many good details. I feel like those are going to leave our entrepreneurs with something for sure that they can implement today. But there were lots of good questions in the chat. So we have a few minutes. So I'm going to jump into those. So this first one is for Pamela. When it comes to restaurants, would recipes be considered intellectual property?
Oh, great question. So on their own, no. If you notice when you look up a recipe and there's like so much backstory in there and it takes forever to get to the recipe at the bottom, the reason for that is copyright law. So if you were to try to submit just a recipe with the measurements to the Copyright Office to get it registered, you would get denied. It's the Copyright Office essentially says that it's too simple of a content or of a, invention of the mind to copyright it because someone could just change, half a cup instead of 1 cup and then it turns into something else. But they said that if it is coupled with, more information, a story, just more content, then that rises to the level of being able to copyright it. So if those blog pages that I'm talking about where the recipes are with the long story, that entire blog article with the recipe can be offered copyright protection, but the recipe alone cannot.
Wow, I was just on one of those pages the other day, scrolling for 3.5
Forever.
years. Yes, that's so interesting. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Okay, so this next question is for Lizette. This person wants to know if you could share how to research and find the right team for your marketing. Yeah, how'd you do that?
So I would say, again, to me, everything is always think of what phase is my business in, right? So for me, when I first started, one of the key things that I look for, obviously if it was a marketing team, someone that worked with restaurants, but as well, I wanted a team that they themselves were also a small company at first so that they can really focus on me. And like, for example, with my marketing team, I've been with them now 10 years. And like the beauty of that has been is like their business has grown, my business has grown, we've both grown together. But when I first started with them, they were still small. And I feel that one-on-one attention, the same thing with my accountant, with my bookkeeper. So, finding someone that's an expert, obviously in the area, you never want to sacrifice that. But that as well, that they are in a similar phase of your business, right? That they are, if I just open my first restaurant, I'm not going to go hire a big marketing firm. One, I don't know, I probably can't afford them. And a lot of times what happens, the key thing that comes is now you're putting these people on your payroll, these teams on your payroll. So you want to make sure that you're also in a place where you're well equipped with information to get your money's worth. Right. So that for me is so key. And how do we get that is by us depending at what level of knowledge we are in. So I would say starting out small and finding companies that are in the same phase as you and that are in your same industry.
Yes, thank you so much. There were more questions, of course, because there was so much good information, but we are at the top of the hour and I want to be mindful of our speakers and their expertise and their time. Really, I want to thank Jessie, Lizette, and Pamela for your time, your openness, all of your expertise today. And thank you to the attendees for being so open and engaged in the chat. I want to thank the PepsiCo Foundation and our local partners for the Impacto Hispanic Accelerator, including our partners with Allies for Community Business, Prospera, and Lift Fund. And yes, thank you to all the entrepreneurs out here today. I hope that you found some more information and you feel ready to watch your business thrive. Don't forget to check out more resources. Thank you all again and have a wonderful day.